Good morning, and thank you, Terry, for the introduction. Indeed, my name is Mikko, and I hunt hackers. That's my job. I've spent my whole life trying to understand where the various online attacks are coming from, trying to understand who are the hackers, who are the online criminals, why do they do what they do, and how these groups and actors keep on evolving and changing. And if someone would have told me 25 years ago when I started my career in computer security that eventually we would be fighting organized crime gangs, that we would be fighting foreign intelligence agencies and militaries, that we would be fighting extremists and terrorists as they would be using computer attacks to do their work. If someone would have told me that, I would not have believed it. That would have sounded science fiction to me. But that's exactly where we are today. And we are living through revolutions right now. We all know this, but it's easy to miss the fact that it's actually pretty cool. Because over the last 25 years, the internet revolution happened. 25 years ago, none of the computers we had were online. Today, every computer we have is online. And the revolution which is happening right now is, of course, the IoT revolution, which is everything else than computers going online. And if we are lucky, if we live long enough, we will live to see a third revolution in our lifetime, third technological revolution in our lifetimes, which would be AI revolution. We'll see. Exciting times. Now, of course, the internet has brought us so much good, but at the very same time, I guess we all know, it has also brought us new problems. Before the internet, you didn't have to worry about criminals who were far away. You didn't have to worry about, let's say, car thieves from Sao Paulo, Brazil. They wouldn't fly over to Barcelona, where we are right now, to steal your cars. But now, of course, today, regardless of where you live, you have to worry about criminals that can be anywhere on the planet, because the internet took away geography, it took away borders, and it took away distance. The internet is as if someone would have given plane tickets to all the criminals everywhere around the world. Now, the criminals who couldn't reach you before the internet can reach you. But I think we would also all agree that the downsides of the internet are much bigger than the upsides of the internet are much bigger than the downsides. The internet has brought us so much good, so much business, so much connectivity, so much entertainment, that the downsides pale in comparison. And despite my line of work, I am an optimist. And I do believe that the thing that happened with the internet is going to happen with the Internet of Things. I do believe when we will be again here in 10 years' time at IoT Solutions World Congress 2027, then we can look back at the first 10, 15 years of IoT, and then we can say that, yeah, IoT brought us a lot of new problems, a lot of security incidents, but the upsides are much bigger than the downsides. That's what I hope. That's what I wish. That's what I believe is going to happen. It's a trade-off. We will get new risks, but of course we will get new benefits as well. So I'm a computer security guy, and we computer security guys have a bad reputation. Why? Because we always say no. We always say no. You come asking for something from your IT department, and it's going to be the security guy that tells you that, nope, you can't do that. Nope, you can't use that kind of a device. Nope, you can't have that connection. Nope, we can't open that port in the firewall for you. We can't do that. Why? Because security. And I don't like that. So I've decided that I'm going to say yes every time. Every time someone asks me for permission, I'm going to say, yeah, Absolutely. Yes, you can do that. Yes. But, of course there's a but. But the way I like to think about security is that security really should be the enabler. Security is the enabler. It's the part that enables you to do what you really want to do. Because none of us buys computers or phones or tablets or any devices just to run security software. That's not really the point, is it? Security really should be the enabler that enables you to do the things that your business needs to do the things that makes you creative, to do the things that entertain you. It should be an enabler, and we should keep it at its position. So we have a revolution at our hands. Who do we blame for that revolution? Well, we can blame this guy, Gordon Moore, of the Moore law fame. And we all know the Moore's law, which is that computing power doubles every 18 months. But then there's the reverse of Moore's law, which is that the cost of existing computing power halves every 18 months. And this is the thing that it really is fueling the IoT revolution. The fact that IoT chipsets are becoming essentially free. The thing that you add to a dumb device to convert it into a smart device, that chipset is eventually going to cost 5 cents, 2 cents, half a cent, essentially free. And right now, especially from a consumer point of view, when you look at IoT devices, they can see the difference. That here's a smart device and here's a traditional device. But as the prices plummet, this difference will go away. And we will end up with IoT devices which are not obvious to the consumer. Let's say a consumer goes buying for a toaster. And obviously toaster doesn't need internet for anything. I think we could all agree that we don't need an app on our phone to tell us that the toast is done, right? But I think they will still be going online, not to benefit the consumer, but to benefit the manufacturers. Because the manufacturers want to collect diagnostic data about their toasters. They want to know where their customers are. And to do this, they will put them online. Of course, they won't do it if it's expensive, but if the price of the chip is going to be half a cent, they will do it. And as new connectivity mechanisms like LTE-M and 5G become more commonplace, this becomes more possible. And this is what drives eventually any appliance, any device which uses electricity to the internet. If you plug it to the electricity grid, you will be plugging it to the internet grid. And then there's another thing happening, another megatrend, which is that everything is becoming really small. Existing technology is shrinking in size, and I think the best example of this is what happened 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, Garry Kasparov famously lost to IBM's Deep Blue in a match of chess. This is 1997, 20 years ago. Deep Blue, the computer that beat Kasparov, is pretty big. It actually has its own power generator. And it has, of course, massive computing power, 11 gigaflops. This is an 11 gigaflop supercomputer. This beat the best chess player in the world. That's 11 gigaflops. This is 800 gigaflops. That's 70, this is 800. The phone in your pocket, a typical current smartphone, your phone can beat 10 Kasparovs at the same time. Your phone is a supercomputer and it runs on batteries. You have a supercomputer in your pocket and it runs on batteries. This is what happens in 20 years. So think 20 years into the future. That's another megatrend for us, which is shaping the world around us and making this revolution a reality. And the revolution really started from factories. It really started from ICS systems, industrial control systems. So take a look at this. This is a reactor, a nuclear reactor, and this is a nuclear reaction. That's what it looks like when a reactor goes critical. Why am I showing you a video of a nuclear reaction? Because this reactor is controlled by a computer. Of course it is. How else would it work? Every nuclear reactor on the planet is controlled by a computer, like is every other factory, every power plant, every factory, every food processing plant, every plant of any kind. Our infrastructure, including our critical infrastructure, runs on computers. And this has changed our work. We, computer security people, we used to think that our job is to secure computers. I'm a computer security guy, I secure computers. Well, that's not really our job anymore, because the whole society runs on computers. The lights are on in this room because of computers. If you work in computer security, your job is not to secure computers. Your job is to secure the society. Now, we saw a great example of this in May as the Windows-based WannaCry malware was going around the world. And you would think that, yeah, okay, that's going to cause problems for Windows computers, like it did. But there's quite a few things out there running Windows. So, for example, this copper mine called the Kevitsa mine, they had problems. Why? Because their drills were infected by WannaCry. Their drills were now demanding Bitcoin ransom payments in order to continue drilling. This is the kind of problems we see as everything is running on computers. Everything is running on computers, including our cars. I don't know if you've seen the last Fast and Furious movie, but it has this plot, sorry for spoiling the movie to you, but it has this plot where cars get hacked and then they are, used as sort of weapons and crashed and cause havoc. And when we read stories about car hacking, we pretty immediately have these thoughts about evil hackers hacking our cars, disabling the brakes, and then driving us off the road and killing us. And I don't think that's going to happen. Why? Because hackers, in general, are not interested in killing people. It's also illegal to kill people. I checked this. It's illegal to kill people. When we look at hacking attacks, we really should be thinking through the motives. Like, why are the attackers doing what they do? What are they benefiting from their attacks? Killing random people by driving their cars off the road is possible. But is it likely? No, I don't think so. So what's more likely? Well, how about hacking cars to steal the cars? And this is already happening. Here's CCTV footage of a guy coming to a Jeep, using his laptop to remotely open the doors. Then he gets into the car, and as he gets into the car, watch what he does. He's not starting hot wiring the car. He actually takes out his MacBook and connects the MacBook with the USB cable to the ODB port of the car. The alarm is blinking right now. After he hacks away for 1 minute, 20 seconds, the blinking stops, the horn stops. After 2 more minutes, the car starts, and he drives away. This is the car hacking of reality. Why? Because this makes sense. This is how you actually make money by hacking. And we already have problems with car theft gangs stealing cars in large quantities. And of course, they would rather steal the cars without breaking the windows, without hot wiring them. If they can do it by hacking, they will. And we can also forecast that self-driving cars, which are becoming a reality right now, I'm guessing we will eventually see self-driving cars turned into self-stealing cars. Imagine waking up in the morning realizing that your car has driven off in the middle of the night because it got hacked. Is that going to happen? I think it's going to happen. Because that's an attack which would make sense from the attacker's point of view. So when we look at everything that's going online, we see 2 types of problems. We see problems coming from configuration error done by the user, or we see vulnerabilities in the devices themselves, where the vendor who built the device didn't do a good enough job of securing the device. And these configuration errors are very common, and it actually isn't a new problem. It's actually a very easy problem to understand. Think back to 1980s. Think back to a typical living room in the 1980s. What do you have in a typical living room in the 1980s? You have a big CRT television, and underneath the TV, you have a VHS player. Every living room had a VHS player, so you could watch movies from videotapes. And every single VHS player in the world was showing the same thing on its screen in the 1980s. Every single one of them, if you remember, was blinking 12 o'clock. 1200. Every single one of them. Why? Well, because when you bought a VCR and you brought it to your home and you plugged it in, it didn't know what time it is. So now it was blinking 12 o'clock, expecting you, the consumer, to go and read the manual. Because the manual of the VCR tells you on page 83 how to set the time. And we never did that. None of us ever did that, right? Every single VHS player was blinking 12 because we never read the manual. And this is the same thing that we are doing today with our IoT devices. We consumers go and buy, I don't know, a new IoT security camera for our summer cottage. We unpack it, we take it out, we put it on the wall, we install the app on our phone, we pair the phone with the camera, and it works, it works. Look, I get the stream, I can see the video, it works. Don't touch it, don't change anything. It works, don't touch it. This is what we do. We never read the manual of the IoT camera because on page 83 of the manual for the camera, it would tell us how to change the default password, how to segment our network, how to set user accounts so some users can look at the stream but they can't configure it. We never do any of those things. And this is one of the reasons why we keep seeing security problems with IoT devices. And then the other problem is the devices having vulnerabilities built in or having default user credentials built in. So pretty much exactly a year ago, we saw Mirai. Mirai, which is Japanese for the future. Mirai, which was and has been so far the single largest IoT botnet we've seen. Around 120,000 infected devices around the world, none of which were computers. Every single one of them was an IoT device. And the way Mirai went around the world was very simple. It was simply scanning IP addresses until it found an IoT device. Then it tried logging on with Telnet, which is a protocol from the 1980s. And then it tried default credentials like admin, support, root, or other different passwords. And with these, it gained access to 120,000 devices. I mean, as simple as that. So what did Mirai do? Well, it used the combined power of that botnet, combined power of 120,000 devices to launch denial of service attacks, massive amounts of traffic against the second largest DNS provider on the internet. DNS, domain name service. DNS, which basically is groundwork for the whole internet. If DNS goes down, basically the internet goes down because addresses no longer work. IP traffic still works, but you don't know, what's the IP address of google.com? I don't think anybody here remembers that. If google.com doesn't work, you could still go there with the IP address, but we don't remember the address. So if DNS breaks, everything breaks. And during the Mirai outbreak, we were actually fingerprinting the devices that we saw causing the attack and figuring out where they were. And I actually phoned up some of the people whose devices were part of this botnet. And the phone calls typically went like this. Hello. This is Mikko from F-Secure. Hi there. We're looking at this large-scale botnet attack. Do you have a this brand air pump in your home? Oh yeah, I do. Well, it seems to be infected with this thing called Mirai. And it's right now attacking the root servers of the DNS around the internet. And it's happening from your home. Cool. That's what people think. It's kind of cool that I'm part of a botnet. Because as long as the heat pump works for them, as long as it doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't hurt their own operations, they don't care if their infected devices are targeting the rest of the internet. And Mirai was a global problem. In fact, it's still out there. The size of the botnet is now much, much smaller, but it is still out there. And these phone calls reminds me of the calls we regularly do when we do port scans across IPv4 address space, because when we do that, we regularly find IoT and ICS devices which are online by accident. For example, factories. So last year we found this one. This is some kind of a steel mill operating somewhere in Central Europe. This is the VNC remote control interface for their steel mill, which we believe is on the internet by accident. We don't think it's supposed to be there because there's no password on it. And you can see that there's 24,000 kilos of steel at the temperature of 1200 degrees in it. So when we find these, we call them up. And these phone calls typically go like this. Hello, hello. This is Mikko from F-Secure. Hi there. We believe your steel mill control interfaces are exposed to the internet. No, they're not. We believe they are. Well, yeah, we do use those systems, but they are not on the internet. We think they are connected to the public internet. No, 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 they're not on the internet. We believe they are. No, they're not. Well, I can click on these buttons. No, please don't. And the story is always the same. This was not supposed to be on the internet. It wasn't on the internet. And then later, someone reconfigured the network. Someone added a new network segment. Someone added a link between two different units. Someone added a remote control access point. Someone added a new VPN rule. And then they get exposed. Because the TCP/IP protocol routes and reroutes until it finds a connection. This is how TCP/IP was designed in the 1960s. And if there's any connection, even very indirect connection between two different points, it will find it. And that's why we find factories and pumping stations and whole homes exposed on the internet by accident. And here's a tip for you. If you are running an IoT security camera to monitor the state of your plants, put a password on it. That's my tip. All right? And if you think these are interesting, these different things that we can find on the internet, which are most likely on there by accident, I suggest you follow a friend of mine on Twitter, a guy called Dan Tentler. He's on Twitter as Viss, V-I-S-S, because he keeps scanning the internet regularly and he keeps finding stuff on the internet which you wouldn't expect to be there. And I am the father of the Hyppönen's law. And the law says that when something is described to you as smart, what you should be hearing is vulnerable. So, here's a smartphone, vulnerable phone. Smart watch, vulnerable watch. Smart car, smart grid, smart city. You get my point. And of course, this is a very simplistic and very pessimistic law, isn't it? Because it basically says anything that becomes advanced is not secure. And it's obviously not that simple. But the fact is, for example, with cars, before they were online, they could not be hacked. Now they are online and they can be hacked. So we really have to take care about how we secure these devices. Because otherwise we end up in situations where the weakest link in our network is an IoT device, with problems like IoT light bulbs leaking the Wi-Fi credentials of the network that they're connected to. Imagine an office which has Wi-Fi light bulbs. Like the servers are secure, the laptops are secure, the desktops are secure, the firewall is in great shape, but the light bulbs are leaking the Wi-Fi password, becoming the weakest link in the network. Last May, we found a vulnerability from dishwashers, a direct web server directory traversal vulnerability, which means that when you connect to the web server on a dishwasher, with this string, you actually get the passwords from the network. And how come a dishwasher even needs to run a web server? That's another thing. And as all these things are going online, they will also need a backend server or some kind of cloud system in the backend. And one thing that creates is the need to keep these cloud backends running as long as these products are being used. And when people buy home appliances, or when people buy things like cars, they expect to use them for a long time, for years and years, for decades. Like when you buy a car, you expect to be able to run it for decades, right? I'm running a 17-year-old car right now. I expect to run it for at least another 10 years. But today, cars and appliances need some kind of a cloud backend. Will the backend be there in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25? Like how long will the vendor keep running it? How long is somebody paying the bills for AWS or Azure cloud that is needed for this service? And when the cloud backend goes away, how will the system fail? We got a taste of this last spring as the S3 storage buckets for Amazon Web Services went down for 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon European time. I spent those 3 hours on Twitter searching for people who were complaining about things that didn't work because Amazon was down. So lots of people complaining about mobile apps. Some apps didn't work. Some games didn't start at all because Amazon was down. Some websites were down. And then there was this one guy saying that he had his oven in his kitchen on, and then Amazon went down, and now he can't turn it off. I can't turn off my oven because Amazon is down. This is the kind of problems we end up with. So how do we do this? How do we make sure IoT vendors take security into account? Because clearly, security doesn't seem to be a #1 selling point for home appliances. Like people, when they buy washing machines, they don't ask questions about firewalls or intrusion prevention technologies in the washing machine. They ask for price, right? Price is the #1 selling point. And if price is the #1 selling point, vendors can't invest large amounts of money into cybersecurity because that's going to make it more expensive, and the features it creates are the features the consumers are not asking for. When there's no clear match between the demands and the wishes of the manufacturers, one way we try to fix problems like these is with regulation. But nobody likes regulation. I guess there's no IoT vendor on the planet which would like to see IoT security regulated. And regulation almost always fails. I'm a much bigger fan of things like self-certification, where vendors self-regulate themselves without hard-handed regulation from the governments. And there are examples of IoT vendors which do make the investment, which do things right. And I'll give you one example. And it's a little bit unexpected example maybe, because the example is IKEA. IKEA makes IoT devices, including these Tråd-free smart lighting systems. And a friend of mine, a hacker friend of mine, bought a set of these from IKEA. It's a lamp, and then there's a mobile app, and you can control it all through the app. And he was sort of chuckling to himself as he was driving home. That, oh my God, IKEA IoT. I'll take it home, I'll see what's inside. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be so bad. And then he took it home and started looking what's inside, and it wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good. It wasn't running some 3 kernels old version of Linux. It was running a custom-made real-time operating system, which was exposing no services to the public internet, which wasn't listening to any other traffic except authenticated traffic, which used strong crypto, which did the updates right. It was actually very well done. Which is a bit surprising, because we all know that IKEA is the place where you go buy cheap stuff. Yet, they seem to do the investments needed to do secure IoT. And I don't actually know why they did this, but I'm guessing it's about their business model. Because their business model is to sell the same products all over the world in 200 countries for extended periods of time, for years and years, for decades. And if that's your business model, the last thing you want is a product recall. So whatever you do, make sure you never have to do a product recall. And if that's what you're trying to avoid, then this makes perfect sense. But we still have a long way to go. Many vendors are not doing the investments needed. And the consumers can't fix the security of their IoT devices in the way that they fix the security of their computers and phones, which is by running security software. You will never install an antivirus on your toaster. That's never going to happen. And this is why we are right now seeing the birth of a new security product category, which is home security routers, including this thing, which we make, which we released last summer. It's called Sense. So these home security routers build a secure Wi-Fi network, and then you connect your IoT devices into this secure Wi-Fi network, which then uses machine learning to learn what is the normal traffic from that device. And then when they see abnormal traffic, the consumer gets a warning on their app, on their phone. But even this isn't the final solution, because as devices change, they will, in 10 years, no longer be going online through things like Wi-Fi. This is a Wi-Fi hotspot. Eventually, they will be using future technologies, and then we will be needing future solutions. Thank you very much.